Can folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, it looks like we got 10:30. We're ready to go. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during our board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. First item is the agenda review. Any questions? Any comments? Okay. And we're going to take the 2026 session update, move that to the end of our work session today. We'll start with the semi-annual update on veteran services and our veteran service officer, Carl Wiley. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you. As I understand, Amanda was going to speak on veteran services briefly first. Is that still the case?
Yep, here's Amanda has joined us. So our management and policy analyst, Amanda Rappenchuk, welcome.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. I appreciate just kind of being flexible with this quick shift. One of the privileges of my role in the county is getting to work with Carl and CCA and managing the VSO contract that the county has with CCA. And so I just wanted to provide a quick update on some of the work that county staff and CCA have been doing together in developing a sustainable model for these services. And so that plan includes starting right away on having 2 full-time VSOs and ideally a full-time administrative support position in the upcoming fiscal year. And with that, just to give you a little bit of context, we've been looking at some data points and comparing veteran populations and VSO staffing. And looking at PSU's numbers for 2025 that they've published, and also the National Center for Veterans Analysis and Statistics, veteran populations, Clatsop County ranks 19th in both total resident population and veteran population, which I thought was really interesting. And we also were looking at VSO staffing for counties with comparable resident population and veteran population, and then using the FTE data in their adopted budgets for this fiscal year. We found that the average number of full-time VSOs is about 2. And so then when assessing the average ratio with those kind of comparable counties that I was talking about, the average ratio of veterans to full-time VSO staff, it's about 1,759 veterans per VSO. And so for Clatsop County with 2 full-time VSOs, that comes out to about 1,658 veterans per VSO. And so that would put us right kind of within that average. And so CCA has been working really hard and pursuing additional funding opportunities to support this model. And without getting too into the weeds, part of what supported the increase of the admin position, Sam's position as the VSO assistant, was ODVA Veteran Services Grant that they had been awarded in the last cycle. There was kind of a 6-month gap between award cycles, so the county had provided some one-time funding to continue supporting that position. CCA reapplied for the grant, but unfortunately wasn't awarded that. So the county, again, provided some additional one-time funding to sustain that through this fiscal year. And as we're working on that model that I mentioned, the 2 full-time VSOs and the 1 full-time admin assistant position, CCA has continued to pursue other funding opportunities, applying for those grants. and also starting kind of the preliminary work of Sam as the VSO assistant, transitioning into that full-time VSO position. And so toward the end of Carl's presentation, when he's providing some program updates, he'll touch on kind of the projected timeline for Sam's VSO training and accreditation, because that's dependent on the training cycles and kind of and that timeline. But he'll kind of touch on that. But I just wanted to give you that update because I know it's just, yeah, without getting into the weeds, there's kind of a lot of details and we've been looking at some data. But I know that this is work that is really important to your board. And there's been a lot of discussions about creating this sustainable staffing model that supports both staff and, most importantly, provides the support that's needed for our local veteran community. But I just wanted to open up in case you had any questions about that work, or if the county manager had anything that he wanted to add on that.
Chair Quayla, members of the board, if I might just build off of what Amanda just presented, is that as we are entering into the 26-27 budget preparation cycle, we are going in with the assumption that there will be 2 full-time VSO officers and the administrative person. I give CCA a lot of credit for their pursuing other revenue options, because I think that is always helpful. But the county is committed at the staff level with the 2 VSO, 1 administrative assistant model. So it's not contingent upon those grants, but obviously those grants would be helpful to the bottom line. But we are moving forward assuming that will be the model. There are resources to create the transition to that model this fiscal year. So we aren't waiting. We're pursuing that now. There's just some requirements regarding training, certification, and some supervision that goes along with that training and certification. So all that work will be going on this fiscal year. So we're happy to answer any questions, but we just wanted to address that before we let Carl go ahead and talk about all the good work they have been doing.
Yeah, I really thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Dawn, for that background. And certainly I think myself and others have received comments from the veterans community that, Carl's doing a fantastic job, but he needs some help. There are, 10% of our population, I think, are veterans. And so there's a huge population. And of course, we've got to increase the capacity to be able to help them. Commissioner Bangs.
I agree with everything that you just shared, and I'm just grateful that this pivot is occurring. It's been, long time needed and discussed, and I appreciate all of the background work that Amanda did in order to make sure that we were comparable to our other communities of like size and population. And what is the timeline for onboarding the second VSO projected?
Thank you, Vice Chair Bangs. I actually don't have the full details on that. I don't know if Carl does, or we're still kind of waiting to hear back from ODVA on the next training cycle. But I know that I did ask him if he can touch on that in his presentation. And because we definitely want to provide that information to you because it's very important.
Do we have any other comments or questions? Are we ready to go into the presentation for Carl? Okay. Carl, our Veterans Service Officer for Clatsop County. Welcome, Carl Wiley.
Thanks, Chair Quayla, Vice Chair Bangs, members of the board. I appreciate once again another opportunity to sit down and share what we've been doing here in the County Veteran Service Office for the last 6 months, and then also looking back over the last 6 months plus the preceding 6 months is kind of a comparative data set, just looking at what our operations are. I'll go ahead towards the end talking about current operations and future planning. I'll address the discussion around timeline for having accreditation of Sam, who's our current VSO assistant here. I point back there because he sits on the other side of the wall. Sorry about that. I'm not pointing ghosts here, I promise. So that being said, I'll touch on that at the end there, but if any questions pop up along the line, please let me know. As always, I will get to those as best as I'm able, and if I can't, I will get that information back to you. So just briefly, the slides that were put out here, I've got, do you want me to share them on the screen, or does everyone have them?
If you can share them, I think that would be great for not just us, but for others that might be tuning in.
Roger that. Let me see if it wants to work right here. For some reason, it doesn't want to pull up the whole slideshow. I think we had this issue the last time as well.
Yeah, we got it.
All right, is that the whole slideshow in front of y'all there?
Yeah, it's slide 1 there. So
Slide one. Roger that.
Yep.
Thank you so much for confirming that. So yeah, here CCA employs me to help provide veteran service officer duties for the county here, providing eligibility determination and claims completion and filing and advocacy through the veterans benefits claim process for all the veterans here in the Clatsop County area predominantly. My accreditation allows me to support, of course, anyone who's a resident of Oregon, but I focus that on Clatsop County residents because that's why I'm here. Though from time to time, we do have folks from across the river come over. If through our vetting process, they still make it into the office, I do my best to assist them as I'm able, but with full understanding that I can't represent them and that my primary focus needs to be here on the county. But we'll go over a quick 12-month look back and then touch on what our current operations look like, as well as future operations, and time for some questions at the end. So very similar slide on the right-hand side of the graphic just kind of shows what the claims process looks like for Department of the Veteran Affairs claims specifically, and usually the service-connected disability claim. It's an in-depth process to validate the to substantiate or unsubstantiate the claim of service-connected disability by the veteran to determine whether or not it is linked to their service and does create a disabling effect. It could be time-consuming and a little convoluted in some of the laws and the verbiage. So part of what I do is help people through that process just by deciphering all the information that comes at them and answering questions and concerns that the VA sends during the evidence gathering and development process. It's what I spend a lot of time doing. And then on the back end, when I receive decisions, or the veteran receives a decision, they can reach out to me. And for denials, I ensure that the VA is standing by what the law requires through the Code of Federal Regulations, and the evidence of record at the time of the decision. But in January to June, on the left side there, you could see that there was 98 claims for disability, and that's not individual conditions. Those are just the claims forms that were sent forward either as a decision review or an initial claim, and one for pension, which is a separate needs-based program for veterans who served during the wartime period. I also, that preceding 6 months, put in 12 survivor pension / dependency indemnity compensation claims for authorized dependents, which is not always considered in the scope of veterans in the county when we look at statistics. When a veteran passes away, that doesn't mean that they are no longer a case file, if you will, that is worked and advocated for by this office, because a lot of the times they have authorized dependents and surviving spouses that have their own entitlement to benefits that I then work on and carry on with them. after the passing of a veteran. Additionally, we did decision reviews last year, or sorry, the previous 6 months. I had 53 decision review claims where we saw an error or we had new and relevant evidence to support a change in their decision that I put forward on behalf of the veteran, and 12 cases for burial in a national cemetery or just receipt of burial benefits, which are a couple of the different benefits entitled that benefits that spouses and veterans are entitled to in light of their service to our nation. In comparison, between July and December of last year, slightly lower number of disability claims put in, which I'll touch on that when we get into kind of the current ops side of the house, why that went down. There were no pension claims. Often we're able to determine that their potential for compensation for a service-connected disability is greater than what they would receive under the pension program. So we pursue and gain the service-connected disability compensation to create a greater level of service and support for the veteran. I had 9 dependent surviving spouses claims put in, 80 decision reviews, which is quite an uptick on errors found and reviews sent forward, and then 8 requests for burial benefits. So it's a relatively high number of claims in total when we consider the number of days in a 6-month work cycle. It's a substantial chunk of work. And here's kind of what it results in, which is the dollars and cents for compensation and pension received by veterans in our county. The graphic on the right-hand side kind of gives that comparison between calendar year 24 and calendar year 25, whereas the table on the left-hand side shows our calendar year 2025 compensation. Monthly payments is the amount coming into the county to county veterans every month from their service-connected disability compensation. I can only speculate as to why it goes up and down, and that's probably mostly because people are moving out who had compensation coming to them and are no longer affiliated with the county and the system, so the report does not pull them. And the same goes for retroactive payment. When a veteran submits a claim, it's on average 6 months, give or take, for that to be put into effect and then to begin receiving monthly compensation. As a result, their retroactive pay is from the time that compensation starts hitting their account to the date we put in the claim. There's typically a large chunk of retroactive pay that comes in there, which is reflected in that row. But you're looking at the total for this last 6 months. It was 11.3 million with about $23.5 million in service-connected disability and compensation and or wartime pension, survivor's pension that's come into the county. Now, as we move on to our 12-month look back continued, just kind of left side is the numbers as far as how many and how we've contacted and connected with veterans, and the right side is through which ways we have conducted our outreach to try and get the word out there and provide not just more information on our programs and benefits and eligibility, but also get out into the community and help folks who can't necessarily make it to our office. And you'll again note that there's been a decline in the number of office visits, which results in a new decline of new veterans brought on. However, we've still maintained about the same amount of number of claims filed, as well as healthcare enrollments. And it's primarily it's office visits. There's every now and again going to people's homes to work with them there because they can't come to us. But a lot of our new clients and new outreach has been through the Veterans Breakfast, which continues to go well every month. And then last year, we did a number of beach cleanups. I want to say 3 or 4 beach cleanups. Sorry if I don't have that exact number in my brain. We continue to support veterans through the Veteran Treatment Court program at Clatsop County Courthouse every Friday. An annual convention for military and veterans specifically to connect with local businesses, employers, and service providers, and each other, as well as Project Homeless Connect, visiting our unhoused or temporarily unstably housed veterans in Columbia and Esperanza Village, providing services on benefits, information on benefits to service members transitioning out of the military. We put up a billboard, have distributed promotional material. I attended the Rogue Cell documentary premiere here at the Liberty Theater. It was a very good experience to engage with veterans there and surviving spouses and to kind of get the community on both sides, veterans and local community members together and learn more about specifically some of the struggles that veterans post-service experience and how that relates to suicide and suicide prevention in the veteran community. And then Sam has been a consistent fixture at local chart meetings to meet with other service organizations working within the county to just find new and better innovative ways to help veterans on our end and to help people serve veterans and understand more about the client base here. This next one is just kind of it's the same heat map that we had previously. It hasn't changed much, as you can see in the numbers reflected on the left side. Learning more and more about the zip codes and how they're affected and how I log people in. I've expanded the Cannon Beach, Arch Cape, Tolovana Park area there, and that added a few more people than what I had been tracking before. I've also had a number of people come from Clatskanie that are kind of just on this side of the Columbia-Clatsop County border. So I include Clatskanie as well as Westport in there. But by and large, it's increasing overall. And that's because more people are learning about our services, getting into the office and establishing file and claims. So going to our current operations, right now we're averaging 3 appointments daily, booked about 2 months out. The 2-month out mark has been relatively consistent. It fluctuates, but it's usually right around 2 to 2.5 months for someone to get in the office. Reducing my average appointments per day has helped me to not only provide good service to people, but to open up a block in the afternoon for urgent appointment slots that can remain free. So I'm not booked solid during my work days and can accommodate those who are unhoused, terminally ill, suffering some form of crisis that needs a little bit more expedient attention. And also it allows me to spend that time when it's not booked with an urgent on reviewing case law, federal regulations, medical documentation to ensure that the VA has done those things right. Because as we noted before, there's been an increase in decision reviews. And that's because I've noticed an increase in errors. And I could speculate all day on why that is. But regardless of the whys that I can't definitively speak to, it is what it is. And I've seen a lot more errors coming through in fact and law at the time of the decision. So creating a compelling argument as to why the VA should change their decision on that takes a little bit more time and a little bit more study on my end. And finally, the last reason that we kind of reduced the amount was I was on medical leave in the month of December, which accounts for the reduction in some of those numbers between the 6-month periods. And that was simply, you know, my healthcare professional said, hey, you need to step away. You're pushing yourself to a point. And that's something that I've had to learn to manage coming out of the military into a one deep slot, where, yeah, I just, striking a balance between sustainability instead of just trying to sprint the marathon, was brought front and center October, November of last year. And as a result, I took the majority of the month of December out of the office to work on that and to reset. So that is one of the reasons that we had the downturn in numbers. And also I've reduced the number of daily appointments by and large. When we look at Veterans Breakfast, we're continuing to do those in partnership with LUMS and our local food service establishments. This last one, we had 64 veterans there. It's amazing. We're starting to, you know, they're going to have to get a bigger showroom at LUMS, but it's still a very quaint and, you know, just a good opportunity for folks to come together, share a meal, and connect over old war stories, if you will, with people who've had like experience. And that's, you can't put a number on how beneficial that is for so many veterans to meet with people who had like experience. With the other events we did, the convention, beach cleanups, those have kind of been all wrapped up for calendar year 25. And as a result, we've put a pause on developing outreach programs, and Sam is focusing on ensuring that we get caught up and are caught up, because he was out for some family leave, bonding leave at the beginning of the year, end of the year, beginning of this year. So we're just getting caught up there to make sure that people aren't left in the lurch as far as return phone calls, emails, web inquiries, and those things. Trends in VA decisions, as you noted, there was an increase in decision reviews, and a lot of it is the VA not considering the evidence in total and relying solely on the medical opinion of that short interaction that a medical provider has with a veteran. They're not considering the total evidence of record, or record of evidence, I'm sorry. So I'm having to go back and point to them that, hey, there is reasonable doubt doctrine, and one medical opinion does not overcome the benefit of the doubt on the veteran's behalf. And then we look to the future. We're continuing the support advocacy for veterans, both in veterans benefits programs and then also in local programs as needed, healthcare, social services, all that kind of stuff, to make sure that the veteran population is cared for to the best of our abilities. Again, the special attention being paid to building a balanced workflow to sustain our operational capacity and effectiveness, so neither one of us burns out and greatly reduces what we can do. Reducing message backlog, we've pretty much, that future operation has become current operation. We're pretty much caught up on all that. And then once we do get that to a current state, within, you know, a couple days lag time on a return message at the most, we're going to start future planning for building our outreach operations, which includes yet another iteration of our military and veteran convention, which we keep planning on and keep trying to make better considering the feedback from previous events. And then lastly, the accreditation of Sam, who sits in our VSO assistant position. Where we are right now is I've received the information from the executive director, Viviana, and HR at Clatsop Community Action to validate the regulatory requirement of 1,000 hours annually for veteran support, basically saying if ODVA accreditates someone, it's going to be worth their while. And the regulation says 1,000 hours annually, which we can definitely meet that. We just had to put it in the right verbiage. I'm going to get that forward to ODVA. I don't have in front of me exactly when the next training cycle starts for new VSOs. However, the relationship that I have with the training office at ODVA should allow me to start the process of the curriculum or sorry, it's been too long since I've been in school. Basically, the order of events required to get them to certification, start those processes of training him in-house before he attends the initial new VSO training. He's already taken the first week of that. When he came on, we had him go to the first week of that. So he'll just have to he'll probably take both weeks again, which is a virtual training experience for him. And then the vast majority of it is studying the regulatory requirements with the curriculum they give us and on-the-job training, where I will, between myself and the training office, will help to quality control and ensure that he is capable of doing it and doing it in a way that doesn't compromise any ethics laws or lose effectiveness on that retroactive pay kind of stuff. Just having the awareness of how to do all of that. But barring any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Carl. I appreciate the update, and I'm so glad you're going to get some help. And I'm glad that Sam's going to be elevated to that second VSO position, and you'll be able to get an admin as well. So that's great news. I see Vice Chair Bangs and Commissioner Thompson. Vice Chair Bangs first.
I have actually two questions. One being the review process or the increased number of reviews that are occurring where possibly an application is getting kicked out with ignoring, all the facts. Is that more of a state level driven force that you're seeing, or is that a federal level?
All these decisions, denials and approvals, they are all at the federal level. And yeah, if I had to speculate, there was a massive shift in government employee. A lot of them went out at the beginning of last year, and the pendulum, I believe, swung back to where they hired a large number of new employees. And of course, you lose the corporate knowledge, the experience, and you're spinning people up. There's going to be more errors. That's the unfortunate fact of new hire. When you have a large influx, it impacts
Yeah.
a bit. So.
That makes sense. I just, the chair and I are going to be going to Washington, D.C. here in April. And if this is a topic that we need to bring up, I would be glad to bring it up. And so, chair, just let's put that on our list maybe. And then the second question being, as Sam pivots away into this new position, do we have a process already in place in order to replace them so that there's not a vacuum that occurs at that time?
The process of bringing Sam into an accredited VSO position, yes, CCA, we had already looked toward the hiring process when we were anticipating grant funding. However, we drew back on that. But Viviana and CCA as a whole is looking to tap other bits of funding to bring somebody in until we can get a full hire once we have a full-time equivalent on the books and established. So my intent is anything that Sam's can do, we will do, but not to the detriment of what is already being done. If that makes sense. I don't want to create that vacuum as you point out. That's very important when we make any shift here, because yeah, we don't want to cripple the program by opening up a new facet of it. So it will be deliberate, and we've discussed how we want to make it move forward. But of course, that is all dependent upon the unknowns and the unseens that come with any transition or growth in service.
Thank you, Carl. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I want to say I feel your pain, having been a counselor and having served in the military, having a husband who is a retired officer and a gentleman. I have questions of a kind of a personal and public interest. I see that you're at capacity and more. I applaud your efforts to manage your workload and your own well-being, which is essential to maintain yourself and your staff and the program for the benefit of all the people. Given all those considerations, is there anything that you find yourself able to do for people who are looking proactively at needing your services so they can prepare? It's analogous to what you're doing with your staffer. Can you give your consumer population any kind of lead-in that will reduce your workload down the line and give them comfort and hope as they find themselves headed toward needing your services?
Thank you. Yes. Part of that is we do in that the point about the transition assistance program. Those are folks who are looking at getting out of service and putting on the mantle of veteran who will need our services. So in our presentations and our briefings to them, we most certainly tell them, here's the things you can start doing. Here's your timelines and when you should start contacting us. And as far as what I could do for other veterans, the best I can say is get in here as soon as possible, because the folks are under the false pretense that they have to have documented medical conditions from their service in Vietnam of a condition up to today's date, and anything could have happened between then and now. So they have to, the greater the gap, the more uncertain they feel. The best thing I can say for folks is get in here now, because the soonest we can establish effectiveness of a service-connected condition, disability, or entitlement to a benefit, the greater the opportunity to receive that benefit at its maximum throughout the process. And don't be discouraged or just write it off because you've not gone to the doctor, because you've not done this. I mean, that's your prerogative as a human being to seek and receive medical care and to take a doctor's advice. And it doesn't negate the fact that what happened to you in service, whether that is documented or not, is actually causing a problem today. Because we can work to build that case together. And so long as it's ethical, moral, and legal, if you can get in the office, I'm going to do everything I can to put a good case forward and fight the good fight. I hate to use the term fight because there's a lot of emotion involved with that, and it's an emotional process already. So I try to keep the emotions away from fighting the VA. We have to work within the system we have and not fight it. It's what we've got. We can change it from a different capacity, not when we're trying to work with it.
I love that. I love the soothing and the compassion and the skill that you bring to this. It's so important. I want to encourage you to reach out up through staff to the board to ask for every consideration and support to maintain you and everyone else involved with the program so that you can honor and serve our warriors.
And thank you. I appreciate that. And you know, it's by the grace of God I go, as they say. At the end of the day, I've had nothing but great support from my executive director, the company of CCA, up through the entire county from Amanda being a frontline, always there, always able and willing to help, Monica, county manager, and the board. All y'all, as they say in Texas, have been great and very supportive, and I appreciate that.
You're as welcome as the flowers, sir.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Great comments and great message, Carl. Commissioner Webb?
Thank you, Chair. My question has to do with this. I'm sorry for the bureaucratic nature of it, but who are you employed by? Is your employer the county or is it CCA?
So, sorry, ma'am, go ahead.
No, that's my simple question.
No, so as I understand it, tax and lottery fund is passed through the state of Oregon, Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs specifically to Clatsop County. Once it hits Clatsop County, it is contracted, the service is contracted to Clatsop Community Action for one full-time equivalent, which they hire me and employ and pay me through their hiring process and employment process. So I'm accredited by Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs. I am employed by Clatsop Community Action, and I serve Clatsop County and its residents.
Okay. And how about the two staff people?
Right now, just the one staff member, Sam, is employed by Clatsop Community, CCA, Clatsop Community Action, and I am his frontline supervisor, with Viviana being the second line executive director.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Wakua?
Thank you, Chair. As always, Carl, thank you very much for what you do. I, from the bottom of my heart, really appreciate you and your role. I don't have a question as much as I do maybe a comment regarding being an advocate for your people. Well, I would propose to be an advocate for you in that, when it comes to your medical leave, you don't owe us an explanation for a medical leave. It can end at that. I appreciate your transparency, but I do, I'm an advocate for my patients, just like I would be for you, and you are for your people. The only thing I would say about that is, take care of yourself so that you can continue taking care of others, because we need you in this role. So that's all. Thank you.
I would just like to say, it's simply, I feel that the transparency of that nature is important in underscoring the need for more VSOs, not in a demand type thing, just saying here's where it's expectation management from my level. So yeah, and I'm an open book. I care to share as much as is appropriate for any given situation, because I found that it's a good opportunity to let other people feel it's okay to take care of themselves too if they see someone else doing it. And absolutely, I wish to care for my staff members, and I am, I realized at the end of last year that I'm learning still how to be an adult in the civilian world. I've never had that opportunity, and with it comes a sharp growing edge, and this was one of them. So I'm still figuring it out.
I fully understand. I have friends that are in your position as well, and I see the difficulties of adjusting, and you're taking on a lot by everything that you're tackling right now. And I just I look through all of that, and I see you just trying to do the best you can, and I just want to be sure that you understand, like, we want you to succeed as well. And so don't compromise yourself to put yourself out so far that you fail at what you do. That's all. And I know that seems fundamental, but just sometimes people need to hear that again. And we want you to be the best that you can be for the people in our community, and that means taking care of yourself first. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, it is certainly fundamental, but fundamentally different from a military culture. So yeah, learning how to do that and that it's acceptable and to not feel bad about it. It's like I said, it's a growing edge, and it's good to have. It's it's a breath of fresh air. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wakua. Commissioner Banks?
I concur with Commissioner Wakua. Just take care of yourself, because over the years, I am still learning that also as a mom, teacher, all of the things, is that it's really hard to acknowledge that maybe you need to take a step back and just breathe for a moment and care for yourself. So you're not alone in the learning curve. So don't ever feel like you're out there alone, because you're not. I did have a question just in regards to Northwest Senior and Disability Services and your office. Is there a working relationship between the two entities?
Insofar as they are a viable referral organization,
Okay.
just like OHP, CC, CBH, the different supportive organizations, absolutely they're top of mind when I'm dealing with someone who's 65 or older, or who experiences disabling conditions that keep them from engaging in life issues or occupational issues, but only in so much as understanding what services they have and when is appropriate to refer them, and they're outside of my scope. Yes, I have referred a number of people there and worked with them in the past.
Okay. Are they offering referrals to you also? Is it a vice versa situation?
I have had people, yes, I've delivered promotional material there, and I've had people come there from here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just an added layer of benefit that comes with their status as a veteran. And yeah, we try to be as comprehensive as possible in getting people as much support as they've earned.
Okay, I really appreciate that, because I am right there with you on wanting to get folks as much support as possible from as many buckets that we can utilize. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's trying to support the whole person. And so, and with my work with Northwestern Senior Disability Services, I have been absolutely amazed about the educational pieces that they offer, especially for our older adults dealing with a lot of the online billing and potential other situations that can occur online. And so, yeah, I'm just grateful. Thank you for working with as many people as you possibly can.
Yes, ma'am. Happy to do it.
All right, well, thanks. We're going to have to move on. I really
sir.
appreciate the comments from the commission. Appreciate your candor, Carl, about and your transparency. That it means a lot to us, and I know that I want you to feel wholly supported. I think Commissioner Wakua said it very well. Is that we want you to have the tools to do your job as effectively as you have, and I'm so glad that you're getting some help. It's fantastic.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity again to come out and share this with you.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yep. Hope you all have a good day.
You too. Next item is ordinance 26-02, zoning digitalization. Digitalization, I can't even say it correctly. That's on page 14 of our agenda here. I'm getting to it. All right. And Jason Pollock, our planner, is joining us. I'll turn it over to you, Jason.
Morning. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. Here to talk about ordinance 2602, zoning digitalization. Are we good with the document in front of everybody, or?
Yeah, do you have slides that you want to show?
I can. I'm just not seeing where to share, where I can share. Or been given.
I think it's if you can share, it's good for others to follow along that are joining us virtually.
It should be on the bottom of your screen, Jason. There's a green arrow.
Oh, okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Are we seeing that?
Yep, we can see them.
Let's see. that okay, or is it not okay for you guys?
I think it's fine. I mean, it's showing your next slide,
Okay.
but I think you can go ahead and go.
Okay, cool. Thanks for your patience. Sorry about
Thanks.
that.
No worries.
So I'm here to talk about zoning digitalization. Our ordinance number is 2602. Just going to go over a bit project summary, what this includes, what we did to review the zoning map, what 2602 the language will be, and then what are next steps on the path to adoption of the ordinance. So just a project summary, basically. Currently, Clatsop County utilizes paper maps as our official maps of zoning for all land use activities. We do have web maps, but it's not the official adopted map. And so our goal is to go through, or what we have done is go through each ordinance and understand and update web maps for the eventual adoption as the official map. So what you see on web maps is essentially not the official map. And we always, as planners, we use web maps, but when a challenging application comes in or a unique application, we always revert to those paper maps to clarify zoning or anything related to that. So just want to make a kind of a important comment here. We don't propose any new zoning, and the changes or updates were for clarity purposes, and were all previously adopted by ordinance by Clatsop County. So we didn't make any zoning changes. And how did we do those changes or updates to web maps? We reviewed all the previous ordinances that our county adopted related to zoning. And we did a pretty big ordinance dive to understand what issues might there be on web maps. And there is a few, and we've in that process notified property owners first in a letter if they had upland zoning that could be affected by this, and through the Measure 56 requirement, even though zoning wasn't changed. Web maps also had, in kind of our phase 2, web maps also had a bunch of digitalization errors, just minor things like what's shown in the slide. And we fixed those to follow property lines and the official paper maps if we needed clarification. Some minor things there. And then our third part of our review was we have what's called these CREST resource base maps that were approved or adopted by Ordinance 9013. And those maps clarify and show the zoning basically in the rivers and the bay and the Columbia River. And doesn't really affect upland zoning, but all water zoning. And some of our web maps were spotty on that information. So we made sure that the base maps are basically scanned in and put on web maps to correct any issues that would have been there. Not too many, but their updates were made to reflect the adopted map. So what's our goal here and why we're doing this is we want to adopt Clatsop County web maps, like I said at the beginning, as the official zoning map of unincorporated Clatsop County, and kind of do away with paper maps that some of those that we use are from 1983 and the 1990s to just provide clarity and make it more accessible. So for example, the slide shows, as you've seen, we've had a number of paper maps shown on this slide deck. And this particular one is a more modern zoning map, which reflects our changes that we've made. So our next steps is we are going to the Planning Commission in a week to present this to them for the first time, and then returning back to the board in April for our hearings to talk about the updates or adoption. And I know I kind of went quickly, but that's kind of the end of my story. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason. So this is unincorporated only. I know we have municipalities reflected on web maps as well. Is there an effort, do you think, to push to make municipal zoning a part of this as well in the future?
Our web maps currently reflects most of the city jurisdictions, and I know our GIS department tries to work with them to update that information as best as we can. So it's always there, but we don't control that as the county.
Right.
But it is important for us as planners and for people in the public to understand where those jurisdictional boundaries lie, so decisions can be made in a good timeline.
Right. Commissioner Wakua?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Jason. I had a question. So regarding the 212 property owners affected by the 3 phases, I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear it from you. How are those 212 people actually impacted by this? And what happens if they don't agree with the impaction that came out of this? For example, they want to contest it or something like that. So sorry, a 2-part question, but I am curious because I'm sure not everybody might be so happy about having some issue come up out of this digitalization process.
So the answer is kind of long, but I'm happy to dive in for a sec here. To be fair, 212 total property owners, but only around 64 of those are people with upland zoning that might have changed. So when I say upland zoning, I mean more residential zones, resource zones, those type of zoning where you could develop and it would be relatively easy to develop. And those people received a separate letter where I sent them the exact change we made, not just a generic letter like we did with the Measure 56 notice, which we're required to do by state statute. And that 64 people on that list received a before and after to show the slight adjustment. And I only had a question from one person when we did that in August and September. So that was our main concern as staff, that those upland properties where someone might be affected by development was addressed. And I can tell you they aren't really easy to talk about, but they're not very affected. They're not going to limit their use of their properties in any substantial way. But we felt it was important to show them a before and after. It's very detailed, so some people did call and have questions, but only one person wanted to understand and see our old maps. And at that point, I presented them with the 80s map and showed them why we made that decision. I think there's a second part of your question. So I know that was long-winded. That's kind of the nature of planning, but the second part of your question was if they contest it. That's a part of the public process. Goal 1 of planning is to involve the public and notify them and have that discussion. Certainly if property or issue was presented to me or another member of staff, we would dive in and understand why that change was made specifically and present it to that member of the public and explain our map history and all the map information we have and why the change was made. Did I miss something there? I can continue as well.
That was very, very thorough. I understand it better. Like I said, I kind of thought that was the answer, but I just wanted to hear from you and make sure that there wasn't a nuance to it that I wasn't understanding. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wakua. And then Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, thank you. Could you give us an example, Jason, of what some of those changes were? I mean, I'm thinking about this, as a planning consultant. If one of my clients calls me and says, well, they've changed the property line, is that an example? What kinds of changes? Can you just give us a couple of examples of what would have changed under the new delineation?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. The big issue is our 1983 maps were made with color pencil and crayon. And when you zoom in, there's some details that, with today's technology, we can decipher, understand. And so sometimes when you zoomed in, maybe that information wasn't there because it was crayon or color pencil and the scales didn't work out. And so we can look at different versions of our map and make a determination that we could update web maps to reflect the correct zoning for a certain part of the parcel. Another example is our crest map. Sometimes didn't reflect on your property. So it was an adopted ordinance. And so, or maybe it was reflected on your property, but it wasn't completely reflected on your property. There's many examples, and I could get you, show you or get you some further information. But
Okay,
when I say that, I mean minor changes were made. I can assure you nothing crazy was altered on people's property, but
well, but were most of the issues around property lines, which now we can use on web maps just simply by downloading dimensional data. So and I guess another one of my pleas is that we have an incredible array of historical maps, and I hope that they will be somehow saved, if not in paper form, which I think really would be the preference, but to actually digitize the historical maps. I think that's important for the history of the county. And I've seen, I've seen the surveyors. I've had clients where I had to look at very, very old survey mapping, and that is actually most of mine, I guess, have been in cities. But I just is there a way that we can ensure that those historical maps are somehow preserved, either physically preserved or digitized themselves? Do you understand? Am I saying
Yeah.
that correctly?
And thank you, Commissioner. I know that either Jason or Gail Hendrickson, our Community Development Director, might be able to answer that.
Oh, there she is.
Hi, good morning, Board and Commissioners. I guess you're both one and the same, Chair and Commissioners. Yes, so definitely, Commissioner Webb, as planners, we like to hoard paper. We would not be destroying or eliminating the paper maps. I don't think it's really practical to digitize the current hand-drawn zoning map simply because of its scale. We'd have to send it out to do that. It remains and will live on our wall. Open to anybody from the public who would like to view it. Just to go back and address some of Commissioner Wakua's questions and expand on what Jason has already talked to your board about, the changes that were made are all based on adopted ordinances. So we did not move any property lines. When you look at the paper wall map, the lines that divide, the black lines that divide the zoning districts will cover property lines in some cases, or people colored over as additional zoning changes were made and you had to make a call as to based on the ordinance what the zoning actually was. So those were the types of changes that were made. And I want to give credit to Jason, who worked for several years on and off as time permitted to complete this project. And he also reached out to assessment and taxation, especially with regard to these upland properties, just to verify that there would not be any tax impacts to those property owners. And that was verified that the changes were so minute that there would not be a financial impact to the property owners or would not cause their properties to be reclassified and reassessed. And I believe that if you also have questions for assessment and taxation, I believe Chris Leader is also on the meeting today and is here to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. Appreciate the additional information. Do we have any other questions? I'm glad that Gail highlighted the hard work and the effort that has gone into this, Jason. It sounds like it's been quite a project overall, and working with multiple departments in order to come up with this result. That's fantastic. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, a well-functioning bureaucracy is a thing of beauty. And I say anytime Chris Leader's in the room, we should ask him if he wants to add anything, just because he's an incredible resource as well. I appreciate the work of staff in this regard.
Chris? Chris, did you have anything you'd like to add? I think Chris might be having some technical issues.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yep, we can hear you.
Can you see me?
No.
I was not a panelist. I was given the prompt to join as a panelist, and some weird things happened on the screen. So I am here. And yes, we were provided a list of the initial list of phase 1 to look at, and I reviewed all of them, and there's not going to be any change. So taxes are calculated on the assessed value. There's not going to be any change in assessed value as a result of this project. And I did reach out to the Department of Revenue to confirm that I laid out the project for them, and that technically this is not a zone change. It's just the official zoning is the old paper maps. They confirmed this is not going to trigger any recalculation of maximum assessed value. So any questions regarding that?
Any questions? No, appreciate that confirmation, Chris. Thank you. All right, Jason, so the next steps are, this is going to go to the Planning Commission this month, and then it'll come back to us next month at the first meeting for the first reading.
That's correct.
Any other comments? Thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item, which is Westport Sewer Service District Rate Study, page 24, and Dean Kiernan, our county engineer. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Aquila, members of the board. We're here today to talk about a rate study that we're currently working on for Westport Sewer. And I had a lot of info in the agenda summary, but I wanted to add a little more to the why. Although there's always a good idea to review rates versus expenses. In 2024, we had a one-stop meeting with Business Oregon, DEQ, and the Department of Agriculture on various funding resources that are available. And for all these resources, in order to receive like subsidized or free funding or reduced interest rates, they all have an affordability rate, which is the rate that our current sewer rates need to be at in order to qualify for this funding, which is based on that meeting from 24 was $66.40, where our current rate is $60. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there before we got started, and I was going to turn this over to Teresa with Raftelis.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you,
Dean. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
Thanks. I'm gonna share my screen here. This did not. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for having me here today to discuss the sewer service rate study that we've been working closely with Dean and Jessica to create and come up with some financial plan scenarios to show you. So we'll give you a little bit of the system overview background, overview of the rate study, what sort of generally goes into a financial plan, our baseline assumptions, reviewing the revenues and O&Ms, the CIP, and then showing you some financial plan, a couple of financial plans for your consideration. So all the homes and businesses have a septic tank for pre-treatment. The liquid from the septic tanks flows to the treatment plant, and the sludge or solids are pumped from the tanks by a third-party hauler and delivered to one of two regional plants for treatment. Operations at the plant have been revised over the past several years to provide better treatment, which is allowing additional time to finish the engineering design on some upgrades to the treatment plant, which then also gives you more time to get grant funding for the treatment plant and collection system upgrades. So what do we do generally with a rate study? We start off with the rate setting framework. We understand, learn about your financial goals and policies and any pricing objectives you may have. We then move into developing a financial plan, evaluating the annual costs, projected revenues under existing rates, and then do a cash flow analysis, assessing that for financial sufficiency and if there are an overall increase to the revenue that you need to be able to safely handle and treat the wastewater from your customers. Once we've done that, and that's kind of where we are today. Once we do that, we move into the cost of service and rate design. So then we look at the cost allocations, our costs being borne by the customers that are creating those costs, et cetera, and then look at some different rate alternatives. And then it would, after that, move into final rate adoption with a report and a public hearing. So what goes into the financial plan? So our inputs consist of customer connections, revenues, operating expenses, any capital projects, and your beginning cash position. And then we also incorporate escalators on those expenses, so we're projecting those out into the future. We then look at your capital project funding. In this case, we're looking at 100% grant funding. So that in essence has the capital project sort of falls out of the calculation since we're presuming it to be fully funded through grants in this analysis. We also look at your fiscal policies and targets such as your cash reserves and any debt coverage that you might have on existing, or if we were going to show any future debt, then we would incorporate that into the analysis. So all that goes into our annual cash flow, and then what comes out is what we call the annual revenue requirements. So this is what you need in addition to what you're already bringing in to make sure you are covering all of your costs, annual projected costs, as well as any reserve targets. So our baseline assumptions, you have about 70 residential accounts, 7 commercial, and 3 vacant properties at the time we did the analysis. We used your fiscal year end 2026 budget for the O&M expenses, and then we worked with staff to develop escalator factors for that, looking out over a 10-year period. Even though the rate setting period is shorter, we like to look out at a longer period to make sure that we aren't, that we're sort of keeping that in mind as we plan, so to try to avoid or minimize surprises later on down the road. As I mentioned, the treatment plant upgrades will be done once grant funding is available, so therefore they sort of fall out of the analysis. Since fiscal year end 2022, the district has obtained $750,000 in grant and ARPA funding for the system cleaning improvements and engineering. This figure doesn't include funding for the rate study, which is being provided directly from the U.S. Water Alliance, who is funded through the EPA. We had a beginning balance for the current fiscal year that we're in, fiscal year ending 2026, of about $280,000. And we're using a reserve target of 25 days of O&M for your operating reserve. And then if there was any cash funded capital, we would also have an additional target that would be equal to that 5-year average of any cash funded capital. So this chart shows out through the planning period, and the light blue is revenues under your existing rate. So if there were no changes made, that's the projected revenue to come in versus your O&M and current debt service. You have a little bit of debt service that I believe defeases in about 3 years. And the difference between the light blue bar and the darker blue bar is the funding gap. So that represents the additional revenue that the district needs to bring in each year just to cover O&M expenses and the remaining bit of debt service. So given that information and the inputs and assumptions, we created 2 scenarios. One was making sure we recover the full projected O&M sewer service cost. The second scenario was looking at what the revenue adjustments would need to be for given a 10% reduction in the O&M sewer service cost. So that would be about $11,000 to $18,000 per year reduction over the planning horizon. For some perspective, over the last 4 budget years, the sewer service costs have been about almost 8% below budget. So the 10% isn't, it's a little bit of a push, but it's not a huge stretch. So it is sort of a realistic example to look at. So the first scenario, the full O&M sewer service costs, we're projecting here for the first 5 years is in the light blue. The grayed out italicized is representing the sort of the longer term lookout, but not anything that would impact rate setting here. It's just giving us that sort of longer term viewpoint. So we're looking at needing about 6% per year overall revenue adjustments during the rate setting period. And so what does that look like on just looking at your fund balance? So you can see here the blue bars is showing the projected fund balance. This green line is showing that reserve target, which is 25% of O&M costs. And then this black line is just helping to divide between the rate setting period here on the left and the future longer term outlook on the right. So you can see even with these 6% per year adjustments, we're still also drawing down on reserves to help cover those costs. And then projecting that in the out years, you might be able to drop down to about 5% per year and able to sort of hang out at that reserve target. Then this other graph kind of shows more the details of the financial plan. The dashed line here is showing revenues under your current rates. The solid line shows the projection of total revenues if you enact the 6% per year, followed by 5% per year. The bars show your annual projected expenses each year, and where you see this magenta underneath the 0 line, that's reflecting that we're drawing down the fund balance. So that mirrors the drawdown in the fund balance you see in the graph above. The second scenario looks at reducing the O&M sewer services component of expenses by 10%. Under that scenario, if you were able to hold that through a 10-year period, we were able to bring the overall revenue adjustments down to 3.5% per year, kind of more in line with, like your longer term CPI, which is usually over a 20-year period, ends up being around, 3.5%. This is kind of keeping pace with your the overall annual projected increase in O&M costs as well. So you can see here on the balance versus reserve target, still drawing down that reserve every year, just doing it a little bit more slowly. So it's all the way out in the 10th year here, you'd be a little bit below this. So, when you come to reevaluate this in 5 years, it may need to look more like 4% a year. But of course, that just depends on where you are in 5 years. And then again, this financial plan detailed, showing again, dash line revenues under the current rates, the solid line, the additional revenue that you get with these overall revenue adjustments, and then the expenses, annual expenses shown in the columns, and then anywhere where this magenta shows up below the line is where we're drawing on those reserves, mirroring that drawdown there. So those are the two financial plans that we worked with and developed for your sort of discussion and feedback. So we can, then next steps would be to take the preferred financial plan and work through the cost of service and develop some rate alternatives for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. So what we're really doing is just drawing down reserves in scenario number 2 to a point that it basically balances with this 3.5% or COLA increase per year, so that in 2036 you'll remain solvent, I guess. Is that correct?
Yeah, in both scenarios, you're doing a mix of increasing the overall revenues that you need to bring in through your rates, as well as drawing down reserves. In the second case, you draw down reserves a little bit more slowly, because we've reduced that O&M a little bit. So it gives you a little bit more reserves where you're able to kind of balance that a little bit.
You've reduced the O&M by 90%.
By 10%.
By 10%. And that means you draw down the reserves more slowly?
Yeah, so the steepness of those two curves. So the one, it took all the way. So in the first case, and I can share, let me share the presentation again so I can bring up those graphs. So this is scenario 1. You can see that you get down to your reserve target by about 2032. And in the next case, it's slower, so it takes all the way to 2036.
Yeah, so it's just going to take you 10 years. Okay. I see Commissioner Thompson and Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested in this presentation. A couple of questions. What's the function of the cash reserves? Because I thought I heard you say 25%, but the slide says 25 days. So I'm not clear on that. And then what's involved in O&M and operations and maintenance? Tell me what reducing that would be actually reducing.
I apologize. That was an error on the slide. It is 25%. So that would be 90 days of O&M. And that amounts to your working capital. So if between the timing of like when you get revenues in from your bills versus when you need an expense pay, that working capital allows you to be able to pay those bills on time while you're waiting for bills to get paid, et cetera. So that helps with that portion.
So a follow-up question, if I may. Thank you. So operations and maintenance isn't exactly how I would think of it. I would consider it a working capital fund. Or, every entity has an issue between when the bills go out and when the revenue is received. And then what's the backup plan for any shortfall for any given period of time? Am I understanding you accurately that this is to cover the time lag between when the bills are sent out and when the revenue is received? Is that accurate?
Yes, because you could have, you know, we don't know when the timing of when expenses will actually, occur. And if you got into a situation where you had a bigger expense, but you didn't have, the revenues coming in to offset that, then you have this balance in your fund that allows you to draw. So you could draw it below that target amount, but then you would be back up there again once the revenues came in. So it basically just allows you to have that fluctuation in your cash flow based on the timing of expenses and revenues.
So we're confident then with the projections that you've made in this study that any problems in some kind of breakdown would be covered by the cash reserves?
And Dean may wanna jump in and answer that because has more experience with how much your repairs and stuff, emergency repairs, et cetera, have cost in the past.
Yeah, a lot of the repairs are pretty minor. One of the things we like schedule for every year is like a septic tank replacement, which is approximately $5,000. And that's probably the highest thing. Most of the other items that cost money are a lot lower than that. So it doesn't take a lot. We don't have a lot of major breakdowns. I think with the plant not dealing with solids, it helps a lot because the plant is simplified. And also with with the engineering we're doing now and the improvements we're going to do, that'll also probably put a lot more reliability into the plant also. So
Okay.
I think, and to Commissioner Thompson's point, I think when you say O&M, you're thinking that's the total cost of operation maintenance. And when you say, well, we're going to reduce it to 90%, someone might think, well, is the county going to subsidize that 10% or how is that being accommodated? But what we're really doing is, I think the capital, you're going to be offsetting that with reserves. Commissioner, yeah, County Manager.
Chair Quidlow, members of the board, just to provide kind of a little context and maybe some terminology that we use when we talk about the general fund is that, we have reserves that are basically creates the runway for stability over the long term. And we use these reserves for really any kind of unexpected expense, which in this case are not, high expenditures. We have a lot of other risky functions that the county does where, the actual dollar amount of an unexpected event could be much higher here. As Dean was just referencing, it's a lot lower threshold. And then it's also there just for that cash reserve notion, just so we have the amount of cash we need to meet any of our obligations as we move forward. When we talk about the O&M side and the 90%, that's just really related to the spend rate. So, generally speaking, we always underexpend what we budget. In this case, the under expenditure has been between 7 and 8% per year. And so that's really what the 10% is addressing. It's just really trying to calibrate what the actual year-end expenditures are and using that number to then project what the revenue needs are moving forward. Because obviously, if you routinely spend 8% less and you base rates upon that, those rates are going to over collect as you go into the future, which we're sensitive to because obviously this is a community. We're having these calibrated as low as possible and still support and sustain the system is kind of that sweet spot. So if you look at the 10% O&M reduction, it's not that the general fund is going to be paying for it or anything else. It's just that is more reflective of what we've been experiencing with our expenditures at the end of the year. And it could be instead of 10%, we use 8%, which is kind of more reflective of what that number is. But how we manage this is very similar to how we manage the other fund balance corporate goals on all of our other funds. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Don. That helps a ton. Helps clarify it for me. And certainly I think with, that given, I would support the 90% myself, but we can have continued discussion here. Commissioner Thompson, do you have a follow-up?
Just one thing, does that contemplate inflation? Because we're seeing such inflation in building materials and labor costs that's the only concern I have. I appreciate all the rest of the discussion and clarification and accept it.
Yes, the O&M costs, we started with your current budget and then worked with staff to review inflation factors for salaries, benefits, et cetera. So that O&M we do have that stepping up every year.
Right. Thank you, Teresa. Commissioner Webb?
Yes, thank you. I have a question about the baseline assumptions. I don't understand where property lines and boundaries are, especially in unincorporated places. So if we have a present units at 70, we have seven commercial units and three what is vacant. What does vacant mean? Are those buildable lots that allow for development? And what other kinds of expansion in the area were considered?
My understanding is those vacant lots but I think they're all homes or other structures that are currently vacant. So there's no one there,
Oh,
taking water or, then distributing wastewater. Dean, please jump in if I've got that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they pay a reduced rate because there's no one in the homes.
oh, interesting. So does this allow for any changes in zoning that might create more buildable lots? And what that implies in terms of present capacity?
Yeah, the capacity of the plant can sustain any type of expansion of zoning. The capacity is about we use about half the capacity of the plant. We run it at full capacity right now because we were having issues with our treatment and because our UVs couldn't keep up. And I don't want to I can dive into it because we use more chemicals now because we're running the full plant, but that also helps with the UVs. So, but once we get the new UVs, we'll be running it probably at half capacity again.
Wow, that's remarkable. That's really remarkable. What does that imply? Now, because I assume you're talking about capacity as being processing capacity, but this doesn't include expansion of the infrastructure required for vacant, truly vacant, unbuilt upon future.
Yeah, there's not a lot of vacant lands out there. So there's maybe two properties that could be brought into the district that are just outside. Oh, actually, there's only one left that could be brought in. That's out. I mean, there's some on the perimeter, but there's no plans for those to be in the district.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Um, wow. Is Gail still on this call? Yes, she is. Are we seeing pressures in that area for development? Are we, I just think that this is a remarkable, we don't have very much infrastructure in Clatsop County that, to my knowledge, is not at capacity. Am I just imagining this? Somebody help me out here.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb, for the question. I think that generally a lot of the special districts, the sewer and water districts do, I won't say struggle, but are always looking at their capacity. You may recall that your board recently passed 2 sets of housing amendments designed to increase housing production over the past year. And even with those zoning changes, we're not seeing from the planning department's viewpoint requests to come in and build duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes in Westport, or to further subdivide land or partition land into smaller parcels. So right now we're not seeing that additional demand. So I think in terms of Westport, we're okay for the situation right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think it would be very interesting to kind of take a close look at that analysis and truly, don't we have to do that for our LCDC requirements for capacity? Don't they ask us to do that? Really?
No, no.
They don't
They-
make, they don't want an infrastructure capacity analysis?
Not on an annual basis. If we were to make additional zone changes, they may request that. And you may recall that was part of the LUBA appeal that occurred. So,
Yeah.
but no, there's no annual reporting requirement to the Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I know we've got a few folks that need to jump off here at, we're past the top of the hour. Are we looking for a decision on an option or to give some guidance, Dean?
Yeah, I think we were just looking for some guidance. When we originally looked at the full budget, it would just seem like a really high number. That's why we thought we could go to the 90%. And then
Yeah.
looking back, it's like we're already kind of reducing what we're doing, and now like our we've been doing a lot of emergency septic pumping the last 5 years, and now we're catching up on that, so that should reduce some costs. And we just found a new supplier for our UV bulbs and sleeves, which will also reduce costs because those are about half price now. So
Yeah, I'm favorable to the 90%. I think, 6% increases are just not going to be manageable for folks living there. I think that makes a lot of sense. The decrease, I think, will be something that people can deal with. We've also put the, congressionally directed spending request in for sewer improvements for Westport, and I hope that, we will be successful with that. We don't know what to expect, but certainly that would be extremely beneficial to receive some federal funding. Do we have any other, Commissioner Webb, did you have your hand up?
Sorry.
How do people feel about the 90%? Do we have thumbs up on that? Everybody, thumbs up? Commissioner Webb? Okay. That'll be the direction there, Dean.
right, we'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Teresa. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate the
Thanks.
presentation.
It was nice meeting you all.
Nice meeting you. Okay, we have the session update. Is the last thing left on our agenda here. And Amanda Rapincheck, our management and policy analyst, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I know we're at time here, so I'll be really quick. Just giving you an update on HB 4148. That's the TLT bill. On Monday, there was a hearing and it had a work session and passed out of committee. There was a indication of a minority report. During the hearing, the DMOs expressed concerns about a component that had to do with the amendment related to resiliency grants for small businesses in the restaurant and lodging industries. They expressed concern with that. And so 2 of the members that had voted no in the committee expressed intent to file a minority report. So essentially what that means is like a dissent of the committee outcome, and that they will be providing their recommendation. I looked on OLIS, it hasn't been filed. I think the concern there is it just adds a few more procedural steps, which can draw out the timeline. So then that means they're going to continue to move forward with the reading. So it's on the Senate floor, and we'll continue with that. But the Senate will first have to consider the minority report if that's filed, which I'm guessing would be to remove the resiliency grants as part of the use of funds. And so we're working closely with CFM to kind of stay updated with that. I know the intent of the legislators that filed the minority that are looking to file the minority report isn't to derail the bill. So hopefully if they're moving forward with that, that will happen fairly quickly, or they'll let the appropriate people know whether or not that will be filed. So we'll continue to keep you updated with that. Industrial symbiosis bill today has the third reading, and hopefully we'll get a House, we'll pass the House, and then we'll move over right to the Senate side to continue reading and then a vote. The transportation side, the SB 1599 had to do with the referendum petition moving to the for the bill that passed in the special session related to transportation funding, those aspects. That is was signed by the governor on Monday, and that is moving that to the May election. So that one is enrolled, or that bill did pass. There's also the session's programmatic bill, that's SB 1601. It includes adjustments needed so that ODOT can redirect certain funds to address the funding gap for operations and maintenance. So that's directing other revenues that's already been collected and policy-wise is restricted to other things, would be going into the state highway fund for that. There was an amendment that was adopted that had to do with those items, and then also includes something that County Fair Association had been working on in the previous session, but that was incorporated, which would be removing the cap on lottery funds that are allocated to the County Fair account. So there's a certain cap, or the full 1% for lottery funds, so it would remove that, and so it could potentially be the full 1%. And in working with our fair manager, that would potentially be 80,000 to 100,000 annually in additional revenue for the Clatsop County Fair and Expo. And then just the budget bill that has just kind of been moving this week, and so we're going to start looking at that and reductions there and kind of who that might impact. So stay tuned, and staff will continue to work with our partners to see what that means and keep you updated on that information. And then just a heads up, I'll be reaching out to your board, providing you a board letter of support for your consideration related to the Clatsop Child Care Retention and Expansion Program that's applying for some grant funding. So that's in support of that. And then I saw that there's another letter request, and I think it's related to an infrastructure project in the city of Warrenton having to do with a state grant. So I'll be working on that and then send a draft letter to your board for consideration soon. Does anybody have any questions?
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. Do we have any questions? We appreciate the summary. Thank you very much. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? Are we ready to go? Thank you very much.